2017 Ways and Means Committee to order, and I will call on Councilmember Speaking to lead us in invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everyone can stand and join me in a moment of silence for those who left for us and fight for our country and your struggle.
Amen. Thank you. First item is, second item is approval of minutes, October the 10th. Got a motion, is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Item 3 is bids and purchases. We have 2 items there. What's the pleasure of the council?
Move for approval.
Second.
And a motion is second. Any discussion on those 2 items? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. 3 is approved. Item 4 is the budget and finance revenue collection approval of amendment 4 to the 2001 Johnson.
Move for approval.
We've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Discussion. I believe, Councilmember Wilson.
No, finish your thought, please, and then I'll...
Okay. I believe at some point that item that was the MLK new pool enclosure and upgrade was going to be withdrawn from this and considered by itself at a later time. And I'm missing something there. I think Mayor, you suggested that. I don't know that it was approved at any meeting, but I just didn't want to pass this over without having that discussion.
The Recreation Committee met last week and did recommend to council that the matter of the MLK pool enclosure be removed from the proposal, and then so you could consider the Johnson Controls without that item on it if council so wanted to, per the recommendation of the Recreation Committee. But then the Sustainability Committee met yesterday, and they had a little different conversation and suggested, motion was made by Councilmember Seekings and seconded by Councilmember Waring, that the pool matter be still attached to the Johnson Controls proposal, but that a second approval would be needed after some more study was done on what was done in North Charleston with the Danny Jones pool and with the electrical system with the thing, with the system. So I guess we have conflicting recommendations from the 2 committees.
So we've got,
Can I just comment briefly?
hold on a minute, Mr. Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was part of that discussion. It was a roundhouse and lively discussion yesterday at the Sustainability Committee. And we had a long conversation about not just the MLK pool, but pools in general and the natatorium. And I think that the motion was made that we put it on, defer it for, we wanted to go 24 months. The reason we wanted to keep it attached is just for the banking purposes, and maybe we'll hear from Ms. Wharton today as to whether or not they talked to the bank to see if this will affect our deal with Nations Bank, is going to fund on the front end our deal with Johnson Controls. But there was a little bit more to the discussion. I mean, obviously something that's been going around these chambers, and we're all adults here, we know, is the discussion about what the future of Charleston looks like in terms of pools, swimming facilities, and the natatorium. So that motion did include that we also have that discussion before it ever comes back to us to put it into the Johnson.
So as far as this motion to approve, we need to amend this motion to do something, either leave it in but require additional activity or additional.
It was to leave it in with a specific requirement of additional activity.
That it come back to us for any further action before it's funded or
The difference between that and a deferral is that it just gives Ms. Wharton the leeway that she needs with the bank. And so I'm happy to hear from her and the mayor and whoever else.
Yeah, I just want to be sure we got the motion correct here before we move on. So, yes, Mr. Gregory.
I want to make sure we got it clear, because in the Recreation Committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, we talked about at a minimum pulling the electrical stuff out of there, okay, for the pool, and try to get that done. And in talking to our CFO, we would have to do that. We would have to pull that $300 and something thousand out for the electrical work.
You have to do the electrical work,
Yes,
yes. Maybe not this year, but
soon. Now, are we talking about something different from that? Are we talking about just deferring the whole thing until CFO has something? Because I thought, because our committee recommended at a minimum, we move forward with the electrical.
We have one license.
I'm sorry, okay.
What we talked about yesterday was delaying the pool, still going forward with it, delaying the pool until we could come to a decision. I had concerns with that if we were borrowing the money, that we would have a prepayment penalty and all of that, so I didn't want to borrow the whole entire amount and wanted a decision based on the pool. So we went, Johnson Controls is here as well. What we could do is a master lease, which we would borrow for the rest of the project now, and then we could borrow later for the pool, with an interest rate risk, of course. So right now, we have a 2.33% interest rate. If we wait and borrow for the pool portion of it, we have an interest rate increased risk with that. And then also the delay, we would want to keep it on the 18-month schedule, but we would have until June to decide whether we wanted to do the pool or not. And then they could stay on the schedule and everything would still be okay.
And
Does that answer the question?
yeah, and just to add on, I mean, we can also possibly pay for this out of the TIF. Out of the TIF funds, we can also pay for this out of the TIF if needed be.
The whole enclosure, if we had enough left in the
In
TIF
the
based
TIF.
on the other projects,
Right,
yes.
Right, okay, just wanted to make sure.
Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. I think what I'm trying to achieve here is I don't want this to simply just slip through and say, well, we won't make a decision on this, but we'll go ahead and borrow the money for it, but it won't really occur. That's how things happen. That's, the best intentions go wrong. We have to have a really serious conversation about, about all of these facilities, what is to come, what has not been built, what we'd like to see, where we're going to go. I'm not going to get into all the comments that I made at the Recreation Committee the other day, but we have a lot of serious stuff that we have not considered as a council. There are a lot of secondary and tertiary concerns that have never made it to you all regarding this project, and fallout that no one has taken into account. And that all needs to be brought forth before we make this decision. And I would like to, I'd like to have this discussion, whether we do it at council, where we do it is of our own time and choosing. But there's a lot to be discussed beyond simply putting a glass bubble on MLK Pool. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts.
Are you talking just about the MLK pool, or are you talking about all these projects?
I'm having that this is a major part of a greater discussion. We have to have this portion of the discussion because this is a monetary item that affects us in the short term, but we have to have the broader discussion because that's how you start to formulate a plan, or not.
Yes, Mr. Waring.
I thought, obviously I'm not on recreation, but I thought we had a great conversation in sustainability that led to, and I think that's what Councilmember Seekings and even the mayor alluded to, a broader conversation and a comprehensive conversation that would include all of our pools, inclusive of discussions on the natatorium. That's the part that I found encouraging, and having the additional time to have that conversation made sense. In addition, Mr. Cassis with SCNG brought the example about having a similar situation up at Danny Jones Pool, putting a cover on it and getting private sector participation and offsetting some of those costs. And I don't think we've had a chance to even attempt that. How much money would be left in the TIF? We briefly spoke about that. So we needed actually more time, but should we hold up the remainder of the process just for that, to have that conversation? I thought it was worthwhile to get the additional time on the pool, moving ahead with some of the remainder of the requests.
Mr. Shade.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that we're clear on all what we're doing here, because the contract that's attached to our agenda, beginning on page 43, specifically addresses this enclosure. So at the Recreation Committee meeting, we moved to amend the contract, if I understand this correctly, in regards to just addressing the electrical component of the pool. And then whatever happened yesterday at the Sustainability Committee meeting seemed to be a little bit different or from that. So I just want a clarification as to where we stand on this, because we've got two different committee reports coming out.
Yeah.
And it seems like we've got a contract that is authorizing the mayor to execute that as it stands. That contract includes the enclosure, but it seems like we either are deferring this or we're just funding without that provision of the contract. I just want to make sure I know what I'm voting on.
Yeah, and that's really my confusion. Let me just kind of recap what I'm seeing is that Recreation Committee has approved this whole report or this recommendation that's here with the exception of just pulling the MLK pool out.
Only the exclosure part, but not the electrical part.
Right.
The whole thing would come out, because you can't do the electrical part of it under this contract. So the whole thing would have to come out.
So we take the whole MLK thing out and we consider that as a separate item moving forward. And then as sustainability, what the Sustainability Committee did was said, leave it in, but require another vote, if you will, on, yeah, have another vote on it before it can really move forward. This will allow finance and everybody to go ahead and start securing the funding for the whole project and, you know, find out what all we need to do. So those are, am I stating that correctly?
Well,
But we could get the funding just for the other part and then later borrow for the pool. So we could go ahead and move forward with the rest of the project and borrow that. It's a master lease, and then we could go back and get the pool later, but we would need to decide by June, which I think is plenty of time to
So we
make
could
that
just leave the
decision.
pool out and do the funding
But you
for
could
the
leave
rest of it and do the master
Right,
lease
and you
just
could
on the
leave the
pool.
contract the way it is with
And
everything
our
else.
risk of doing that is we may have an interest risk
Right,
of going up.
that's right.
I don't think it's
For
going down.
that- for that
Is
portion of the pool.
Okay, so the motion is to accept the
What's that?
contract as is with further review in June as it relates to the pool.
Well, to be honest with you, we had a motion to approve this. We have not amended it. And so what I'd like to hear is, are we going to accept it? Are we going to amend it for sustainability? Or are we going to amend it for Recreation Committee?
Mr. Chairman, before we go forward, maybe I can make a couple more comments because there may be some further amendments that should be addressed.
Oh, you want to confuse it a little bit more? Go right ahead.
If you don't mind, that'd be wonderful. And Ms. Warden, the email you sent me was very helpful. Unfortunately, it's on my laptop, my iPad, so I'm going to have to ad-lib here. If you've got that email, it'd be helpful just to reflect to. But a couple of things I want to pull out of that we had questions we had asked that were very succinctly answered, but they pointed me to wanting to readdress these, starting with the HVAC systems, and it was identified sort of in a pie chart as to how many were being replaced, the age, et cetera, and it clarified all those things that I felt like we knew, and now that we got the clarity, we do know. And that is that there is a significant number of HVAC units that are intended to be replaced, some of which are less than 5 years old, some are less than 3 years old. An HVAC unit is somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 to replace a 3-ton unit, and we've got a lot of them stacked up to be replaced that have lots of useful life left in them. So I would recommend that the HVAC units to be replaced be amended, that we replace those that are older than 20 years, because that's really at the end of its useful life, and we could save ourselves, and I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but it's a fair amount that we could save ourselves by going through that exercise. It contemplated in the answer that it was like, okay, if we replace them, they'll all be replaced at the same time. Well, I can tell you that's not always a good thing, because if you replace 100 units at the same time, and 10 years from now, 100 units go bad all at the same time, that
Yes.
becomes a very significant financial strain on us as a city. So I would contend that it's better to have a number of units in different ages that we have, even if they are still the old R22, which again, as I'll say, I get it from an environmental standpoint, it's challenging, but at the same time, if they don't leak, they don't cause a problem. So that would be number one. The second thing I would ask is that with City Hall, I understand that Johnson Controls didn't do the work here. They would only be fixing
That's
what
right.
was done, but this renovation isn't that old. So the question I had was, the contractor that did in fact install the work that was identified as being, needing to be addressed, the loops and all of that, is there an opportunity to go back to them? Is that not a warranty item that they can cover so that we don't end up taking all of that cost?
It's past the warranty period
Right.
for us to do that. It was
Isn't that always the way it
2006.
works?
It's always the way it works, yes.
And then the last thing is, just to clarify, we had talked about the ice machine, largest, I think, in the world, and least used, I'm sure of it, that is not going to be replaced?
That's right. We took
Okay.
that out.
But it's not out of the document, as I understand. So again, back to that amendment, we need to,
It's out.
oh, it is out?
It is out.
Okay,
It
all
is
right.
out. Mhm.
And then the last thing I'll say is, the one thing that causes me a little consternation in this is the term cost avoidance. Boy, that's a little flowery. And what really caused me to ask the question in all of this is if you look year over year over year at our budget, our utility costs never go down. And I get that, our usage may go up and the number of buildings that we take on, but the reality is that for as much as we are growing in our usage, our savings are never equating to anything that is substantial enough to make an offset. So there really is no effective overall savings from a real dollar standpoint that we use. So when we use the word cost avoidance, and I got all the documents and all the kilowatt hours and all that, and most of it was Greek to me, but the best I could come down to is this, is that the word cost avoidance, it doesn't point to real dollars and cents, and that causes me concern. I don't know that there's a way to fix that or address it. I'm just saying, for the record, that's where my challenge is. So, I'm done.
Can't do that. Okay?
All right, yes, Ms.
I
Wilson.
just have one further comment, and it's just something I want to put out to all of you as my colleagues. It's a little disturbing to have one committee who was arbitrarily able to overrule another committee with a decision. The Recreation Committee made a decision, and who's to say that the Sustainability Committee is able to go ahead and undo that decision? So that, I don't know whether the Sustainability Committee was even made aware of what the Recreation Committee had, the action they had chosen to take. So that does concern me, just as a functioning council. And I think we need to be aware of that, we need to acknowledge it, and we need to come up with some sort of answer. And secondly, I want to dovetail into what Councilmember White said with cost avoidance. I'm looking at here, and we're talking about the solar panels for the pool that have saved us $477,000. They couldn't because they haven't worked. So numbers are what you make them. And again, let's see the kilowatt hour savings. And I would ask somebody to produce those savings to me.
All right,
Just one further, with this amendment here and amendment there, I might just throw out there that unless there's some overarching reason that this needs to be passed tonight from a timing standpoint, I just would question whether or not taking and deferring it for one more meeting, making these adjustments, getting it right from that which came from Recreation, which came from Sustainability Committee, and then subsequent to my comments around the HVAC, whether or not that would be a more appropriate action. I don't know if there's a timing issue here, but just a suggestion.
yeah, Mr. Mitchell, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I make a lot of comments here. First, when this thing first came to us, it pertained to the pool, I went throughout my community, neighborhood association meeting, and explained to them what was going to happen to that pool on the east side. And over the period of time, telling them that we're going to do this, we're going to upgrade the pool, we're going to do this enclosure and all this. They were satisfied with it. They loved the idea of it because they always felt that they always been left out of things, even with the pool there. even when we had the renovation of the park itself, when I brought it up here on council, and we went around and started doing all the parks and improving the parks, putting more things in the park for the young people to play with. Now we're coming back and saying, oh, we're going to hold up on this, we're going to hold up on that. Why is it all the time we have to always hold up on something that's going to come in that area that was that area was not getting what they should have gotten for years? That pool, like I keep telling everyone, that's a community pool that the people in the community don't even have the right to even use the pool. That's my problem. That's my first problem. The kids in that pool only get 2 or 3 hours in that particular pool. But by the time they get out of school and go home and change clothes or whatever the case, then you got a half an hour. We have all the swim meets. I don't have a problem with that at all, because that's the only pool that they can have the swim meets to it and all that. But it's still a community pool, which is located in District 4, and I represent District 4. Now, I hear all these things thrown around, we need to leave this alone, do the electrical work, leave it alone, delay it for a period of time. We always delaying things on that area. Everything is being delayed. I'm getting tired of it. And I believe that we should go on and do what we're gonna do, get the pool done, do the enclosure, put it all back together, and that's what I want to see. Now, I know some people might have a little problem with that, but they'd be all right. That's what I want to see. I have represented that district all these years, and I know exactly what they need. I'm on that. I visit that park all the time. I see what's happening on that park, and I don't know if some of you all probably was on council when we had a big debate pertaining to that up in Rosemount, when they threw all the people out of there and then they want them to even come in there. I said, what y'all think that somebody's got something going to wash off on the other kids in the pool? I said, you could have separated the pool and leave 2 lanes open that they can come in the pool themselves. So we are throwing all these things around, but you all are not there on that east side, dealing with the people on the east side, dealing with that community from East Central to the east side and all areas. That's still a community pool, and that's what I want to see done. Hey, you know, the enclosure, I would like to see everything back in place like it started, and just go and vote on it. If you don't want to pass it, approve it, that's your prerogative, but that's what I want to see.
Okay.
And that's, I'm going to make a motion to that too.
All right, who made the motion? Somebody made a motion, somebody seconded it as presented.
Yeah,
I mentioned defer.
Somebody mentioned.
Mr. Lewis made the motion,
I know, I didn't make the motion, but I want to say something.
Mr. Seekings made the motion to approve,
well, no, I didn't. I wasn't even sitting here with him.
Williams, Gordon,
Mitchell and Williams made the motion to approve and second. Okay, let me figure out where we are. We've got a motion to approve what was presented. We've had a discussion to amend it or defer it. We've had 2 motions to amend, or 2 comments to amend and 1 comment to defer. So if that's where we are, so I can call for the question, or we can have some more discussion. So
I do have a little,
let me ask Mr. Lewis, since he has not spoken before, and then Mr. Williams.
I kind of agree first with Councilwoman Wilson, that we got 2 committees saying something different. It's very unheard of. But the fact is, we were talking for years with putting a cover over that pool. I think it's in this budget, it's been in this budget, it should stay in this budget, regardless of what we're looking at with North Charleston might have done. If still yet, if we can get the private sector to come and help do something with the pool, it'd be great, because I can tell you what, 90% of the time that pool is open, the kids on the east side don't get to use that pool. They have different meets and stuff. People from North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, Somerville, or wherever you call it, come and have these meets. But let's not deprive the people in the east side of having a pool with a closure, an upgraded pool, and then we could work all this other stuff out later on. But I'm for trying to get some of the private sector to help pay for it if it's possible, because the people that's supposed to use it half the time in the city don't get to use it. I'm talking about the city of Charleston. I'm not just talking about the east side, city of Charleston, because they have so many meets, people from all walks of life. And the people in the city have to wait until they're finished with these different meets. So if we're gonna pay for it, if it's in our budget, if we're gonna enclose it, whatever it takes to enclose it, let's keep that in the budget. If there's some problem with the electrical work, That's for staff. That's why we got a staff, our capital project department, and our CFO. Let them work the logistics out on how we're gonna do the rest of the work.
Mr. Williams.
Yes, the majority of the pools in Charleston are obsolete and old, so I kind of concur, why don't we do this? But, you know, I don't know what the whole goal of this is, but half of those pools are, how old are these pools, Jason? How old are most of these pools?
This pool itself was built in 1968.
Wow.
Before you.
And the residents of Johns Island don't have a pool or recreation facility. So, you know, I concur that this need to be fixed.
All right, any other comments? Yes, Mr. Seekings.
I think just procedurally, I'd like to respond to Councilmember Wilson, because I think she brings up a good point. It's never good to pit committee against committee, and I don't think that was the intention. Just so you know how this all actually came about, this did come to the Sustainability Committee originally, and it was a late scheduled meeting of the Sustainability Committee, and we were missing some of our non-council members, including Danny Cassis from SCNG. We had a long discussion about not just MLK pool, but pools that exist and pools that don't. And so it was a recommendation of the Sustainability Committee to send it to the Recreation Committee to have a discussion about the pool specifically, and then bring it back through Sustainability to get a more roundhouse discussion and include particularly Mr. Cassis, but other members of the committee who are citizen members, not elected officials. So we weren't trying to pit anything against anybody, and maybe in hindsight, the best way to have done it would have had a joint meeting between the Recreation Committee and the Sustainability Committee. We didn't do that, so we've learned our lesson, but the intention yesterday in our debate was to square up the Johnson Controls contract with the concerns about MLK Pool and the larger pool issue, and the concerns of Ms. Wharton and her staff about getting financing in place so we don't backslide on the interest rates, and making sure that certain phraseologies that Councilmember White brought up really actually result in the end in cost savings to the city. So it was well-intentioned. It was not perhaps the most efficient way to do it, but that's sort of where we are. And I don't know, and Ms. Wharton can tell us, is there going to be some penalty to us to give this one more time to get it all together and bring it back? Are we in a time crunch here?
How long does the Bank of America, is that for until December 5th? We should be okay for one more meeting.
And I see the mayor has his hand up, so
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to share also that I clearly, it was before Councilmember Waring got to the meeting yesterday, but I clearly let the committee know the vote that took place at the Recreation Committee. They knew that when we started the meeting, just for the record.
That's right.
And you know, it seems to me the matter is now before us all, before Ways and Means Committee, and I know it's a little awkward that one committee, Recreation, basically said, go forward without the pool. And Sustainability is saying, let's go forward with the proviso that the pool still needs another approval by a council after this larger discussion occurs. You know, and I do think that it's prudent to proceed, particularly with the HVAC, the air conditioning, and all the lighting proposal. I mean, I must say Councilmember White makes a good point, and if it were not for the replacement of the 22 Freon, you know, and maybe even over the next year, we can phase some of this in rather than doing it all in the same month or whatever. But I do think it's important that we approve kind of one or the other so we can at least get the air conditioning and the lighting improvements going, because the savings are 30%, you know, to our energy uses for overall. And we did take the ice machine out, which was really not needed at all. So the motion on the floor is for the whole enchilada, I believe, and we could see whether that either passes or gets amended to require another approval. But I just thought I'd give that perspective.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going, that we can vote on this motion the way it is. That's what the motion is, unless Mr. Mitchell wants to amend his motion. But if he doesn't, then we'll vote on it as it is. And then if it fails, then we'll have an opportunity to either cut something out or defer it or whatever. So, Mr. Gregory.
Yeah, I want to address Council Member Wilson's point about two committees. One is a standing committee, which is recreation. The other is an advisory committee. There is a clear distinction between the two. And I want that to be a part of the record, okay? One is advisory committee, one is a standing committee of council, okay? That's the distinction to me.
Mr. Waring. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make that distinction.
Don't pause, we got stuff to do.
Right, no, you can't pause, Ryan. You know, I really think this is something that we should defer because of the two committees involved, number one, and perhaps those two committees come together and come up with a recommendation to this body, as opposed to us trying to go through it with the body of the whole, because there are too many pieces here. I don't think that anyone here is saying that we're not going to move forward with the cover and all that kind of stuff. What I'm hearing is that we need a much more comprehensive review, not just of the MLK pool, but all of our facilities, and bring that to the body. And I think that's worthy of deferring this motion, deferring this until we all can come together as a body, the two advisory committee, recreation committee, and make a recommendation to the body of the whole. That would be mine.
All right.
That's your motion?
Mr. Shade?
I think Mr. Waring.
I second.
Sorry, Mr. Waring and then Mr. Shade.
I second the motion to defer.
Okay.
And I agree with everything that the gentleman to my right and the gentleman to my left said, Councilman
Okay.
Seekings as well.
So we got a motion to defer in
One
a
thing
second.
to add,
And you
that
want
the
to,
sustainability conversation was not, with all deference, Councilmember Mitchell taking anything away. It was really to be a more broader solution for all communities. It wasn't pitting one community against another. And this is the first time in 5.5 years that I've heard that a logic conversation with pools, inclusive of a natatorium, should be elevated to this level. Not sidebar conversation, a comprehensive. And I think it would be a lost opportunity if what took place in sustainability didn't continue. So I'll support the deferral.
all right, so we got a motion second to defer. Mr. Shade,
And I just want to.
speaking to the motion to defer.
Correct, and this is why I think we need to defer and have this joint committee, because at recreation, we heard some very compelling reasons why not to vote for the enclosure. And the mayor made a motion, I think, to talk about the electrical system in part, and some of the issues that Ms. Wilson brought up about the age of the pool and the shutting down of the pool and the impact it would have on the community. I don't want to speak to the rest of the members of the committee, but to me were important issues being brought up. Hearing Councilmember Mitchell's position on this, I mean, we're getting totally different compelling arguments on this. And I think it would behoove us if the Recreation Committee and Sustainability Committee can meet together as a joint committee, hear this, iron all of this out, and let's get it right.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mitchell.
Okay, right at this point, since I see the, most of the council members looking for the deferral, I would go to deferral, but I'm going to still say we can reach deferred and we can have the two committees meeting together, which I'm also a part of the Sustainability Committee also, and this came up a long time ago. And we're going to look at this very seriously, but I'm still committed to have it all done at one time. Okay? That's my point.
All right,
So
any
I'll go
other
with that.
comments on the motion to defer? All those in favor of the motion to defer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One no? Okay, the ayes have it. Item number 4 is deferred. All right, item number 5 is the approval to accept a sled grant, the amount of, got a motion, is there a second on item 5? Is there a second? You got a second? Any discussion on item 5? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 5 is approved. Item 6 is the Office of Cultural Affairs.
Second.
7 and 8, since they're all for.
Second.
Got a motion to approve 6, 7, and 8, which are all Office of Cultural Affairs. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Mitchell, thank you, sir. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 9 is,
Second.
got a motion and a second on 9. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item 10 is the capital approval of Charleston Fire Department 2016 FEMA generator grant replacement construction
Move for
contract.
approval.
We got a motion. Is there a second? Okay. Is there any discussion on item 10? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, item number 11 is also a capital project, the Spring and Cannon
So
Street.
moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on item 11? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 11 is approved. 12 is approval of increase of West Edge parking garage constructability review purchase
For
order.
approval?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a okay. Any discussion on item 12? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
One nay? Yeah.
Ain't but 2,000.
You can always hear Mr. Lewis's voice.
We just throwing away money in this project.
Oh, Lord.
Come back to haunt us one day.
Okay, item 13 is approval of the Volvo tennis.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on 13. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 13 is approved. Item 14 and 15 are both two contracts on the West
Move for
Edge.
approval.
Got a motion on both 14 and 15. Any discussion on those? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
A nay? One nay?
On the Greenway?
All right, item 16.
That's not West Edge.
Excuse
That's
me.
not West Edge.
I was thinking it was West Edge. We fine on this one.
Cancel that nay.
15 is being deferred. Right.
Okay, so,
That's just the number 14.
all right, so 14 then, and 15 is deferred.
Okay, that's Mitchell. It seems Councilman Lewis,
He withdrew
Vote on
his,
it. I vote on that one. I want it, yeah.
Or West Edge.
all right, 15 is deferred. All right, all those in favor of 14 signify by saying aye. Okay, any opposed? 14 is approved. 16 is public service approval of professional service contract with Johnson, whatever that is, and Associates in the amount of $250 to provide third-party plan review related to the new development and redevelopment projects. This is necessary to maintain the level of service given with the variety of number of development submittal received by the city TRC process.
I don't know what that means.
Got a motion?
I don't know what it means.
Have no motion fails for want of a motion, or did somebody make a?
Somebody explain it?
I'll make a motion.
Well, wait a minute, you're gonna make, before
make a
we
mo-
discuss it, let's,
Yeah, make a motion.
you
Move for
gotta make a
approval.
motion. Did you second it, Mr. Mayor, to get it on the floor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, who's got, Laura?
I don't understand 16.
Explanation of number 16, the
okay.
third-party plan review.
Right, so this is to help us with our NPDES permit review. So part of the development process is we have to enforce the NPDES permit, which requires us to approve plans, erosion control plans, and their whole stormwater plan. And with the amount of work that we've had lately, we just don't have enough staff to keep up with the demand that's coming through the office. So, for example, today, we went over 17 projects that came in for the next TRC meeting. So even though we've got 3 engineers working on it, we find that we need to use a third-party reviewer to help us meet that demand.
You know, my comment on that is, you know, we have a lot of problems at planning and a lot of other departments, and as I'm kind of looking at this, I'm seeing this as a way to get over some of those peaks. Is that really what this is all about?
That's right.
Is there a process that we went through to select this group? Or was there RFQ sent out, or?
Yes, so we sent out our RFQ, we received submittals, we had a selection committee. I think Councilmember Willie, did you sit on the selection
did.
committee? I think you
I did.
did. And they were found to be the firm that was most qualified. This firm actually has been doing plan review for us in the past, and they actually attended training with us at DHEC so that we're all on the same page when they're doing review for us. They're not doing it separate from us. They're actually coming, we meet before every TRC meeting, go over all the comments from our in-house engineers and our third-party engineers to make sure we're treating each project the same way.
Okay, Councilmember White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, around the process, Ms. Cabinet, so I recognize that this is for the Technical Review Committee. My only, I guess, fear, so maybe walking me through the process a little bit, is that I wouldn't want a third party, maybe, for lack of better words, passing judgment on projects for one way or another that weren't specific to technical issues. So what I mean by that is if they're simply going through the manual and saying, okay, you must have this if you have this, and it's very clear cut. And again, I just clarity, I call technical reviews, I presume that's the case. I just want to make sure it's not something that they're being given any type of latitude that says, okay, well, if you have a project, we believe you need this, or we think you need that, but it's very, very clear, they're just facilitating and checking all boxes.
They're reviewing based on the manual. And if there's any question, we sit down and we all discuss it and make sure that we're adhering to what our requirements are.
Mr. Williams first, and then Mr. Gregory.
One of the things I would say with this additional services, when projects are held up in technical review, it's an added cost in the back end to the consumer. So as much as we can push these projects through, that cost will not be on the consumer in terms of pricing. And you hear that a lot in the development community, is that we got to expedite our technical review process and make it customer friendly. So I think this additional work does that.
Thank you.
Mr. Gregory.
250,000 could hire a couple of staff persons full-time, to me, okay? And it's not going to get any better in terms of the number of reviews that you have. I think it's going to get even worse. So to me, I think that we should be looking at this long-term and determine whether or not we need to staff you up better so that you would have the capacity to do what you need to do. I know we can't do that overnight, but I really think that we need to start looking into staffing you guys up permanently, okay? Instead of spending $250,000, which to me could hire probably at least 2 or 3 people permanently, and try to identify the sources for long term. That's just something I want for the record. But, when we start these ad hoc hiring, when we know that things are going to continue to increase, I don't think that's a good way for us to do it. We need to staff you up if you need it and make sure that they're there when you need it. Just for the record.
Mr. Gregory. Mr. Waring.
Just curious, how long does this 250 last? I mean, it's for 6 months, a year?
No, it's with the contracts actually $250,000 a year with a possible 2 further $250,000 a year extensions.
$250,000 a year?
Extension, yes. Staff up.
So we're also, at the same time, the mayor's asked us to look into increasing fees. And so we're looking at that too, is how we can make up for some of this cost. But you have to, when we do a stormwater plan review, we're getting plans in for a subdivision. It might be 200 sheets, and a stormwater report that might be 500 or 600 sheets. And it's definitely the longest, most in-depth review of all of the TRC committee that we have to go through. And so these projects are coming in, basically, every week, we're generally seeing, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's 10, but lately it's not uncommon for it to be 15, 17, 20, 23 reviews a week.
Well, let me ask a follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Have you put in for increased staff?
We have increased staff. We are hiring some more inspectors, and I think this will just get us over the peaks. And long-term, we can consider to hire more people, but right now, this will help us with, the last time we hired a plan reviewer, it really takes him about 6 months to come up to speed. And it's not easy today to hire a licensed professional engineer or a licensed surveyor that have the abilities just to step in and start doing this work. And it's hard to entice them away from private development right now. There's a high demand for these folks out there.
All right, any other questions? Yes, Mr. Lewis.
I just want to thank Councilman Gregory for his comments, but for years, the Public Service Department has been very well understaffed, not only with engineers, with building inspections, and this city is growing, and you can't continue to try to serve the public and get these, if we talk about, we just had to go out and contract, get people to help with sanitation with 6 or 8 months ago, because they were so far behind. So I think that's one thing that this council needs to take a look at seriously, maybe not this year, because we were already working on the budget, but Mr. Mayor, next year, I can tell you this, every department in this city is understaffed. We don't like raising taxes, we don't like raising fees, so if we're going to give the service, we're going to have money coming from somewhere to give the service. People are expecting service, and we can't continue to overwork the people and then have the complaints, but we're taking too long to okay these different permits. Someone, garbage getting missed because garbage man is out there from 7 in the morning till 9 at night. So we need to take an overall look at these departments and see where we need to staff it and start early working on next year's budget, especially in public service and planning. Those are two departments that really need a real good overhaul. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this issue? So we're going to bring number 16. We've got a motion, a second, to approve this contract. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. 16 is approved. 17 is housing and community
Move for
development.
approval.
Got a motion, a second on 17. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 17 is approved. 18 is the License Committee. Mr. Gregory.
Licensing really being a subcommittee of met on October 11th at 2 p.m. And what we did was we reviewed our ordinance and we made some amendments. Is Josh here? Joshua? Just in case I missed something. There were two major recommendations for amendments to the ordinance. One was to reduce the penalty from 55% max.
That's right.
To 35% max.
Yes, sir.
The second was to extend the grace period for when an applicant would be deemed late.
Right.
And therefore, the penalty will accrue. Mm-hmm. And I think we took that to February 28th.
Right, so the late fees will start March 1st.
Okay, so I got it right. Thank you.
All right, so you're going to move for approval of the licensing ordinance as presented?
Yes.
Second.
And we got a second. Any discussion on those items? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Saying aye.
Any opposed? 18 is approved. 19, the real estate, we have no committee report, so that project is deferred, so there is no report from real estate. Anything else for finance or ways and means? All those in favor of a motion to adjourn, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.